8:35, everybody. Let's continue our coverage. PIX11 is your local election headquarters. Democrats and Republicans, they are still scrambling for the upper hand in the House and the Senate, with some races too close to call, really, in yesterday's election. However, voters in District 15 in the Bronx re-elected Congressman Ritchie Torres in a landslide.
Yeah, New York had 26 seats up for grabs in the House, and the results of these races could change the political future of the country. So joining us this morning is Congressman Ritchie Torres from the Bronx. Good morning and congratulations to you, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor.
So New York's congressional delegation could be shaken up a bit. I mean, we're still waiting for all the votes to be counted, but there are some seats on Long Island and in the Hudson Valley that could shift the balance of power in the House. So what exactly will that mean for you?
Look, I am pleased with the midterm elections given what was expected. Republicans were waiting for a red wave that never came. The red wave used to nothing more than a trickle. You know, the party in power has historically lost the House in midterm elections by wide margins. You know, Truman lost 55 seats in his midterm election, Clinton 53 seats, Obama 63 seats. Worst case scenario, we might lose only a few seats in single digits. Democrats have had one of the best performances for an in-power party in midterm elections, and Republicans have had one of the worst performances. And the reason can be summed up in two words: Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump's control of the Republican Party has become the kiss of death.
You know, a lot of his candidates didn't perform as well as expected last night, but it only would take 5 seats, a net gain of 5 seats for the Republicans to take control of the House. If that does happen, because it is too early to tell right now, of course they need 218 and they are in the lead. What does it mean for you as a Democrat in the House, working together with the Republican colleagues?
Look, it would represent a nightmare for the country. And, you know, part of the reason the Republicans did so poorly is the Republicans have become too extreme. You know, the Supreme Court's decision to reverse Roe versus Wade, the Republican Party's crusade to deny and decertify the 2020 election. You know, those two events have exposed the extremism of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has become unacceptable to the majority of Americans, and that's what explains their poor performance in the midterm elections.
But do you feel like the parties are going to be able to work together then?
There are some issues on which there can be bipartisanship, and keep in mind that under Democratic control, we've had the most bipartisan Congress in recent memory. We passed a bipartisan gun safety bill, a bipartisan infrastructure bill, a bipartisan science and research and development bill. So there has been bipartisanship under President Biden.
You know, there have been some critics who said there were some missteps in the Democratic Party's messaging during the campaign. We just had your Staten Island now counterpart, Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis, on, who talked about Republicans gaining some seats specifically in New York. So while the red wave may not have happened around the country, certainly flipped some blue seats in New York to red. Sean Patrick Maloney, for example. What were your thoughts on the New York Republican gains, especially considering that these lines were redrawn in the redistricting maps?
Look, the races in Long Island are too close to call, but, you know, certainly there are areas in New York that were much better than historically has been the case and elsewhere in the country. But again, I think expectations matter. People were expecting a red wave, a massacre for Democrats, and instead we held our own because we turned out the vote. You know, Kathy Hochul defeated Lee Zeldin by 5 points, which was much more decisive than some of the polls had indicated toward the end of the election.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a little bit surprising to see how the Democrats did. It wasn't expected. And Democrats came out in record numbers. They outnumber Republicans 2-1. But based on these election results, though, it appears that Democrats are losing ground in some parts of the state. So what steps do you think the party needs to do to address that?
Look, the country and the state is so polarized. Both sides are voting in high numbers. Democrats and Republicans are voting in historically high numbers. And so elections have become about turnout. You know, in places where we failed to turn out the vote, like in Florida, Democrats lost. But we won the governor's race in New York. We won congressional seats across the country because Democrats were turning out in historic numbers. When we turn out, we win. That is the central lesson of the 2022 midterms.
All right, we'll see how the rest of it shapes out. We're still waiting for some of those House results to come in. But Congressman Torres, thank you for being here. Congratulations on your victory. And thanks for making this one of your first stops post-Election Day.
Take care.